The early morning sun cast long shadows across the fields as Lin Wei stood at the edge of his family's pig farm. The land had been in his family for 3 generations, passed down from grandfather to father and now to him. But today marked the beginning of something completely new. Heavy yellow bulldozers rumbled across the once quiet farmland, breaking ground for what would soon become one of China's most advanced pig farms. Lin watched with a mixture of pride and nervousness. This was his dream taking shape before his eyes. "Do you really think this will work?" asked his father, Wang, coming to stand beside him. The older man's face was weathered from decades of traditional farming, his hands tough and calloused from daily work with the animals. Lin nodded confidently. The old ways are too difficult to compete now. After 4 years studying agricultural engineering in Beijing, I've seen what's possible. The conversation was one they'd had many times. When Lin first returned home with plans for an automated farm, his father had laughed. Machines raising pigs? Impossible. But Lin had shown him videos of similar operations starting up in other provinces. He brought financial reports and business plans. Eventually, his persistence won over not just his father, but also local investors who saw the potential. Now, those same investors were arriving in shiny cars, parking alongside the village road. Men and women in business suits stepped carefully around muddy puddles, making their way toward the small tent that had been set up for today's groundbreaking ceremony. "Mr. Lin, a moment please," called Zhao Yang, the regional agricultural director. "The mayor is arriving soon. We should prepare to start." Lin smoothed down his one-button shirt and took a deep breath. In his pocket was the speech he'd written and rewritten a dozen times. Though only 28 years old, today he would address government officials, bank representatives, and most importantly, his neighbors, fellow farmers who had watched him grow up. From the nearby village, people began gathering at the edge of the construction site. Old Chen, who owned the farm next door, squinted suspiciously at the construction equipment. "Too modern," Lin overheard him mutter to another farmer. "Pigs need human care. Machines can't understand animals." Lin's younger sister, Mi, was busy arranging tea and snacks for the guests. She caught his eye and gave him an encouraging smile. She had supported his vision from the start, even when their father hesitated. "This farm will house 50,000 pigs," Lin explained to a group of curious village children who had gathered around a display showing the farm design. "And we'll need just a few people to run it." The children's eyes widened with amazement. "But where will all the workers go?" asked one little boy. "My father tends pigs. Will he lose his job?" The innocent question hit Lin like a punch to the stomach. He crouched down to the child's level. "We'll need different kinds of workers. People who can operate computers and fix machines. Maybe your father can learn these skills too." The mayor's car pulled up and a small band began to play. Lin hurried to take his position on the small stage. As he looked out at the crowd, officials in their crisp suits on one side, villagers in work clothes on the other, he felt the weight of 2 worlds resting on his shoulders. "Today, we begin building the future," Lin started, his voice gaining strength with each word. "For centuries, our families have raised pigs with our hands. Now we will use our minds instead." In the front row, his father nodded slowly, pride mixed with lingering doubt in his eyes. Behind him, Lin could see some of the older farmers whispering to each other, their faces showing clear skepticism. When Lin described how the new systems would work, robots cleaning waste automatically, computers mixing perfect feed amounts, cameras watching each pig's health, he saw expressions ranging from wonder to disbelief. As the ceremony ended and Lin pressed the symbolic button to start the first excavator digging, he knew this was just the beginning of a long journey. The machines might be ready, but convincing people would be the real challenge. This farm wasn't just about raising pigs differently, it was about changing a way of life that had existed for countless generations. The future had arrived in their small village, and nothing would ever be the same again. 6 months had passed since the groundbreaking ceremony, and the landscape had transformed completely. Where once stood simple pig pens and muddy yards, now rose steel frameworks and concrete foundations. The automated farm was taking shape, looking more like a factory than anything the villagers recognized as a farm. Zhang Mei wiped sweat from her forehead as she studied the blueprints spread across a makeshift table. As the construction manager, every problem eventually found its way to her desk. The feeding system pipes won't fit through the spaces we left in the walls, reported Tao, one of the local workers who had been hired for the build. Though he'd been a bricklayer all his life, nothing in his experience had prepared him for the complexity of this project. We'll need to adjust the wall openings, May said, making quick notes. Tell the crew to stop work in Section 3 until I can speak with the engineers. Nearby, a group of foreign consultants huddled around a computer screen. They had been brought in from Germany to help install the feeding systems, technology that could identify each pig individually and provide exactly the right amount of food based on the animal's weight, health, and growth pattern. Never seen anything like it, muttered old Liu, who had stopped his bicycle on the road to watch the construction. Several other villagers had gathered as well, their daily routine now including a stop to observe the strange new building rising in their community. My grandfather would turn in his grave, said another farmer. Pigs raised by machines instead of human hands. May overheard these comments as she walked past. Though born in a nearby city, she understood the villagers' concerns. This project wasn't just changing a farm, it was challenging centuries of tradition. Inside the main building, Li Feng, the chief Chinese engineer, argued with his German counterpart about the climate control systems. You don't understand our summers, Li insisted. When humidity reaches 90% and temperature hits 38 degrees, your European systems will fail. The specifications are clear, replied Klaas, pointing at his laptop screen. These units can handle tropical conditions. On paper, maybe, Li shut back. But I've seen European equipment fail during our summer monsoons. We need to install additional cooling capacity. Such disagreements happen daily as the Chinese team try to adapt foreign technology to local conditions. Though Mai lacked the technical knowledge to resolve all the disputes, her skill at finding compromises kept the project moving forward. That evening, dark clouds gathered on the horizon. The weather report had warned of heavy rains coming, the start of the monsoon season. May checked the construction site one last time before heading home. Just as she was about to leave, her phone rang. It was Lin Wei, the young farmer whose vision had started this entire project. How are we progressing? He asked anxiously. The investors are asking for updates. We're on schedule, May assured him, not mentioning the growing list of complications. But there's a storm coming tonight. After hanging up, May felt a raindrop hit her cheek. Looking at the partially built structure, she suddenly realized a serious problem. The newly delivered electronic equipment was stored in a section with an unfinished roof. Everyone back to the site, she shouted, calling her team. We need to move the equipment and secure the tarps before the rain hits. Workers rushed back from their dinner breaks, racing against the darkening sky. The first heavy raindrops began to fall as they hurriedly moved boxes of sensitive control panels and computer servers to safer areas. By midnight, the storm had become a downpour. May and a small team remained on site, holding tarps against the wind, redirecting streams of water away from electrical installations. They worked through the night, soaked to the skin but determined to protect the expensive equipment that represented the heart of the farm's automation. As dawn broke, the rain finally eased. May surveyed the site, exhausted but relieved. They had prevented a disaster that could have delayed the project by months. Walking home through the muddy village road, she passed several traditional pig farmers heading out to their simple pens, ready for another day of hands-on work with their animals. Your fancy computers survived the rain? One called out to her with a knowing smile. They did, May answered with tired pride. But only because people protected them. The farmer nodded, a small gesture of respect. Perhaps these machines weren't replacing humans after all, just changing how people worked with the animals that had been part of village life for generations. Red banners fluttered in the breeze as hundreds of people gathered for the grand opening of the automated pig farm. After a year of construction, challenges and delays, the day had finally arrived. A stage had been set up near the entrance, with rows of chairs for important guests, government officials, investors, and media crews from across the country. Dr. Huang Jin, the farm's technical director, fidgeted nervously backstage. As the person responsible for making all the technology work together, today was as much a test for him as it was a celebration. 3 minutes until the Minister of Agriculture arrives, whispered an assistant, handing Dr. Huang a bottle of water. Are you ready for the tour? Dr. Huang nodded, though his stomach was in knots. Just yesterday, they discovered a glitch in the feeding system that had taken hours to fix. What else might go wrong when the spotlight was on them? Outside, a convoy of black cars pulled up. Officials in dark suits emerged, greeted by Lin Wei and the farm's management team. Camera flashes lit up the morning as journalists captured every handshake. "This facility represents the future of Chinese agriculture," announced the minister in his speech. "A perfect example of how we can feed our growing population while using fewer resources." The audience applauded politely. Among them sat several rows of local farmers, their weathered faces showing mixed emotions. Some looked curious, others skeptical, a few openly hostile to what they saw as a threat to their way of life. After the speeches came the moment Dr. Huang had been dreading, the official tour. He led the minister and other VIPs through sliding glass doors into what they called the Silicon Sty. "What you're seeing is the world's most advanced pig farming facility," Dr. Huang explained, his confidence growing as the systems functioned perfectly. "These robots clean waste automatically, saving labor and improving hygiene." Everyone watched, impressed, as mechanical arms swept through a pen, removing waste while the pigs continued eating, unbothered by the machines they'd grown accustomed to. "And here," Dr. Huang continued, pointing to screens displaying columns of numbers and pig faces, "our AI systems monitor each animal's health through facial recognition. The computer knows each of our 20,000 pigs individually. Better than I know my own children," joked one official, earning laughter from the group. The tour continued through climate-controlled rooms where temperature, humidity, and air quality were constantly adjusted to ideal levels. They observed the automated feeding system measuring precise amounts of food based on each pig's needs. The breeding section showcased how computers selected the best genetic matches to produce healthier piglets. By the time they reached the end, even the most doubtful visitors seemed impressed. The minister patted Dr. Huang on the shoulder. "Remarkable achievement," he said before departing. But as the crowds left and cameras turned off, reality set in. Alone in the control room, Dr. Huang stared at alert messages popping up on his screens. "System conflict in Section 4, reported a young technician named Wei Fang. The facial recognition identified pig #4256 as potentially ill, but the weight sensors showed normal eating patterns." Dr. Huang frowned. What did the system do? It triggered quarantine protocols. "The pig has been automatically moved to isolation." "Show me the data," Dr. Huang demanded. For the next hour, they analyzed the information. The pig's temperature was slightly elevated according to thermal cameras, but all other signs were normal. "False alarm," Dr. Huang finally concluded. "The facial recognition is too sensitive. We need to adjust the parameters." As they worked to fix the issue, more alerts appeared. The feeding system had reduced rations for an entire pen based on one pig's decreased appetite. In another section, the climate control had overcompensated for a minor temperature fluctuation. By evening, exhausted and frustrated, Dr. Huang sat alone in the canteen. The grand opening had gone smoothly on camera, but behind the scenes, the farm's various technologies were fighting each other like jealous siblings. An old janitor placed a cup of tea before him. "Trouble with your machines?" the man asked with a knowing smile. Dr. Huang nodded. "They're like children who don't listen to each other." "My grandfather raised pigs for 60 years, the janitor said. "He always told me pigs aren't numbers. Each one has a personality." The comment struck Dr. Huang. All his education in computer science and engineering hadn't prepared him for this insight, that the challenge wasn't just integrating different technologies, but bridging the gap between digital logic and biological reality. "Maybe," Dr. Huang said thoughtfully, "we need our machines to think less like computers and more like farmers." The night shift at the automated pig farm was usually quiet. Most systems ran on their own, needing only occasional monitoring from the small staff. Wu Jing, a young technician who had grown up on a traditional pig farm before studying computer science at university, sat alone in the control room. The wall of screens showed everything running normally, feeding systems operating on schedule, temperature and humidity at optimal levels, all 20,000 pigs resting peacefully. Wu sipped her tea and checked the weather report. A thunderstorm was approaching, but the farm had weathered many storms before. The backup generators were ready if needed. At precisely 2:17 a.m., lightning struck a power line 2 kilometers away. The control room went dark for a second before emergency lights flickered on. Wu sat up straight, suddenly alert. "System switching to backup power," announced an automated voice, but something was wrong. The backup generator indicators remained red instead of turning green. Wu grabbed her radio. "Joe, check the generators." She called to the maintenance worker who should be making his rounds. "Already on it," came the crackled reply. "They're not starting automatically. Try manual override." Wu's fingers flew across her keyboard, trying to diagnose the problem. One by one, alarm notifications began popping up on her screen. Without power, the ventilation systems had stopped. Temperature was rising in the pig barns. Feeding systems were locked down. Water pumps were offline. "This is bad," she muttered, grabbing her emergency procedures manual. She had never dealt with a complete power failure before. The radio crackled again. "Bad news," said Zhou. "The automatic transfer switch is fried. Lightning must have hit it. Generators won't start without replacing it." "How long?" "Hours. We don't have a spare switch." Wu felt panic rising in her chest. Hours without power meant hours without ventilation in crowded pig barns. In the summer heat, that could quickly become dangerous. She called Dr. Huang, waking him from sleep. After a brief explanation, he said what she feared. "We need to open the barn doors manually, get everyone on site." Within 30 minutes, the farm's skeleton night crew had been joined by staff called from their beds. They gathered in the dimly lit meeting room as Dr. Huang laid out the situation. "The electronic locks on the feeding systems won't open without power," explained the farm manager. "We have thousands of pigs that won't get fed in the morning unless we fix this." "Can't we just wait for the power to come back?" asked someone. "The pigs will be fine without one feeding," said another. Wu spoke up. "It's not just the feeding. The ventilation is down. In this heat, the barns will become dangerously hot within hours, and the waste removal systems aren't running either." Everyone fell silent, realizing the severity of the situation. Their ultra-modern farm, designed to run with minimal human intervention, now needed human hands desperately. "I grew up on a pig farm," Wu said quietly. "Before all this technology, I know what to do." Under Wu's guidance, they split into teams. Some staff manually opened ventilation hatches that normally operated automatically. Others filled water troughs the old-fashioned way, with buckets and hoses connected to water tanks. The biggest challenge was the electronic feeding system. Designed to be tamper-proof, the controls were now locked behind powerless interfaces. "There must be a manual override," Dr. Huang insisted, studying the schematics by flashlight. Wu examined the feeding bins thoughtfully. "There is," she said finally. "But it's not in the computer, it's here." She pointed to a small access panel hidden on the side of each feed hopper. Using maintenance tools, Wu demonstrated how to open the panel and trigger the mechanism inside that would release feed. It was tedious work. Each feeding station had to be opened individually, but it would save the operation. As dawn broke, staff members moved through the barns, pen by pen, performing tasks that machines usually handled. Many of the younger employees, hired for their technical skills, had never actually touched a pig before. Now they found themselves face to face with the animals their computers usually managed from a distance. When the power finally came back on 6 hours later, everyone gathered in the canteen, exhausted but triumphant. They had prevented disaster through old-fashioned farm work, the very thing the automated system had been designed to replace. Dr. Huang stood before the tired team. "Today has taught us something important," he said. "Our farm isn't just about technology. It's about knowing when human hands are still needed." Lei Mai walked slowly through the village market, carrying a basket of vegetables. At 50 years old, she had spent most of her life working on traditional pig farms, knowing each animal by its spots and personality. Now, almost a year after the automated farm opened, her life had changed in ways she never imagined. "Me, how is your new job?" called out Wan, the vegetable seller. "Still working with those computer pigs?" May smiled. "They're still real pigs, Wan. Just the way we care for them is different." After the automated farm opened, many local farmers lost work. Some moved to the city, others found jobs in nearby factories. but May had been one of the lucky ones selected for the farm's training program. Now, instead of feeding pigs and cleaning pens by hand, she monitored their health through computer screens. "Do you like it better?" Juan asked, handing her fresh greens. May thought for a moment. "The work is cleaner. My back doesn't hurt anymore. But sometimes I miss knowing each pig. Now they're just numbers on a screen." As Mai continued her shopping, she noticed a stranger talking to people in the market. The woman carried a notebook and spoke with shopkeepers and farmers. Later, as Mai waited for the bus to take her to her afternoon shift, the stranger approached. "Excuse me, I'm Ken Yu," the woman introduced herself. "I'm a sociologist from Beijing University, studying how the automated farm has changed your community. Could I ask you some questions?" May nodded cautiously. "You work at the farm?" Chen asked. "Yes, for 10 months now. I monitor the health systems." "And before?" 28 years at the Huang family farm, caring for pigs the traditional way." Chen scribbled notes. "What's the biggest difference?" May looked toward the distant outline of the automated farm, visible on the horizon with its modern buildings and satellite dishes. "Before, I knew all my pigs," she said slowly. "Number 4723 was born last spring. Her mother was nervous, needed special attention. She grew up strong but doesn't like cold water. She prefers to sleep in the corner of her pen." Chen looked confused. "You remember all that about one pig?" May laughed. "That's how we farmed. Now the computer knows those things. Not me. I just watch for red alerts on the screen." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of 3 young people getting off the incoming bus. They wore clean clothes and carried backpacks, clearly not farm workers of the traditional type. "Who are they?" Chen asked. "City kids," May explained. "Coming home." As rural jobs disappeared, many young people had left for cities to find work. But surprisingly, the automated farm was bringing some back. With its need for technicians, programmers, and engineers, young people with technical education were finding opportunities they never expected in their home village. Later that day, in the farm's break room, May watched as Zhang Tao, a 24-year-old who had returned from university in Shanghai, explained a computer problem to Dr. Huang. Tao had grown up in the village but left to study robotics engineering. Now he had a good job just 10 minutes from his parents' home. "The facial recognition still has trouble with black pigs," Tao was saying. "Their features don't show up well on camera." Dr. Huang nodded. "We need better lighting in Section 3. May sipped her tea, listening. The technical talk still confused her sometimes. During her training, she had struggled with even basic computer skills. Her fingers, rough from decades of farm work, seemed too clumsy for keyboard and mouse. "Me," Dr. Huang called, noticing her. "Come look at this. Are these pigs showing signs of stress?" May walked over to the screen showing live video from one of the pens. She studied the animals carefully. "Yes," she said confidently. "See how they're holding their ears? And the way they're moving, too restless. Something's bothering them." Dr. Huang looked impressed. "The system didn't flag anything, but you're right. The temperature sensor in that section might be malfunctioning." Tao quickly typed commands to check the environmental controls. May felt a small surge of pride. The young engineers might understand the technology, but she understood the pigs. Perhaps there was still value in her lifetime of experience. Walking home that evening, May passed the old Huang farm where she had once worked. It stood empty now, the pens silent. The village was changing. Fewer farm workers but more technical jobs, less physical labor but more education required. As the sociologist Chen had told her that morning, this isn't just about a new way to raise pigs. It's about a new way to live in rural China. May wasn't sure if it was better or worse, just different. And like the pigs adapting to their computerized environment, she too was learning to adapt. The village had never seen so many foreigners before. Sleek cars and vans with company logos filled the usually quiet roads leading to the automated pig farm. People from all over the world, Americans in pressed suits, Europeans with expensive cameras, Japanese with digital notepads, had come to see the facility that agricultural magazines were calling the future of farming. Lin Wei, now farm director, straightened his tie nervously before greeting another group of visitors. After 18 months of operation, their farm had become something of a global sensation. Their production costs were 40% lower than traditional farms, disease outbreaks had dropped by 75%, and the quality of meat had improved significantly. "Welcome to our facility," Lin said to the latest group, representatives from a large American agricultural company. "We're honored to share our experiences with you." The Americans smiled politely, but their eyes held a hint of skepticism. Lin had seen that look before. Foreign visitors often arrived doubting that a Chinese farm could truly be this advanced. "Before we begin the tour," said Thompson, the lead American visitor, "I want to be clear. We're just here to observe. Our consumers would never accept pork from such an industrial process." Lin nodded politely. "Of course. Please follow me." As they walked through the facility, Lin noticed how the Americans whispered to each other, taking photos when they thought no one was looking. Their official stance might be skepticism, but their actions showed intense interest. Zhang Tao, the young engineer who had returned from Shanghai, led the technical portion of the tour. "Our facial recognition system identifies each pig individually," he explained. "We can track their health, eating habits, and growth rates precisely." "Does anyone actually check on the pigs in person?" asked one American, raising an eyebrow. "Absolutely," Tao answered confidently. "Technology is our tool, not our replacement. Let me introduce you to someone." He called over Li Mei, who now supervised the health monitoring team. Mei has 30 years of pig farming experience. She trains our computers to recognize subtle signs that machines might miss. Mei smiled shyly at the foreigners. "Computers are smart, but pigs are complicated. They need both machine eyes and human eyes watching them." The visitors seemed surprised by this integration of traditional knowledge with advanced technology. After the Americans left, another group arrived, environmental activists from Europe. They had come with concerns, but were impressed by the farm's waste management systems. "Your methane capture is remarkable," said their leader, a serious woman from Germany. "And water usage per pig is 60% below industry average. Environmental protection was always part of our plan," Lin explained as they toured the water recycling facility. "Healthy environment, healthy pigs, healthy people." Not all visitors were so positive. Later that week, animal welfare advocates arrived, worried about the pigs' psychological well-being. "How do you ensure these animals have quality of life?" asked their spokesperson, watching pigs through a viewing window. Dr. Huang, who had developed many of the farm systems, took this question seriously. "We actually found that consistent care and stable environment reduces stress. See these play areas? Our data showed pigs with enrichment activities grow better and stay healthier." The farm had indeed evolved from its original design. After observing the pigs' behavior, they had added features not in the original plans: textured walls for scratching, automatically rotating toys, and even music played during feeding times after experiments showed it reduced aggression. By week's end, Lin was exhausted from hosting visitors. Sitting in his office with Dr. Huang and Zhang Mai, the construction manager who had stayed on as operations director, he scrolled through his messages. "More requests for tours," he sighed. "Agricultural ministers from Thailand and Vietnam. A university research team from Australia. 2 more American companies." "The world is watching us now," May said, pouring tea for everyone. Suddenly, Lin's phone rang. The call was from a government agricultural official, and his tone was urgent. "There's an outbreak of African swine fever in 3 provinces," the official reported. "Over 40 farms infected already. Your district might be next. Prepare for emergency protocols." African swine fever was every pig farmer's nightmare, highly contagious and often fatal. Previous outbreaks had devastated entire regions. Lin immediately activated their emergency response plan. The farm went into lockdown. All visits were cancelled. Disinfection stations were doubled. The automated monitoring systems were set to their highest sensitivity to detect any unusual behaviors or temperatures. For 2 tense weeks, they watched as reports came in of devastation across the region. Traditional farms were being hit hardest, entire herds destroyed, farmers losing everything. But the automated farm remained untouched. Their biosecurity measures, automated disinfection systems, air filtration, strict movement controls monitored by cameras had created an effective barrier. When government inspectors finally declared the crisis contained, they came to study why this one farm had remained safe while others fell. "Your biosecurity isn't just better," said the lead inspector. "It's consistent. Human-managed farms have gaps when people get tired or forget steps. Your automated systems never get tired." As Lin walked the inspector back to his car, they passed the outer fence where several local farmers had gathered. These were the same people who had once mocked the too modern farm. Now they watched with different expressions: respect, curiosity, and hope. "Will you teach us?" One older farmer called out. "Not everything, we can't afford all this, but something to help us protect our pigs." Lin looked at the man, then at the modern facility behind him. "Yes," he said, "that's exactly what we should do next." 5 years had passed since the automated pig farm first opened its gates. The morning sun cast long shadows as Lin Wei walked through the main barn, tablet in hand, nodding to workers as he passed. At 33, he had become something of a celebrity in agricultural circles, overseeing not just this facility but 2 others built on the same model across China. "Good morning, Director Lin," called out an older man adjusting a feed line. It was old Chen, once the farm's biggest critic, now employed maintaining the simpler mechanical systems. "How are the new piglets in Section 4? Lin asked. "Growing well. The mother is very protective, keeps pushing away the cleaning robot. We've had to adjust its schedule." Lin smiled at this. 5 years ago, they would have programmed the robot to continue regardless of the mother pig's behavior. Now they knew better. The farm had changed considerably from its original design. The sleek, fully automated vision had gradually given way to a more balanced approach. Some tasks once assigned to robots had returned to human hands. Other systems had been simplified after proving unnecessarily complex. In the control room, Lai Mei, now the farm's most senior supervisor, was training a young woman from a nearby village. "See how the pigs move in the morning? That's normal activity. But if you see this pattern in the afternoon, it might indicate discomfort." Mei pointed to a video screen showing pig behavior patterns. The facial recognition system that once seemed so impressive had been simplified. It still identified each pig, but focused more on group behavior than individual metrics. "The computer gives us numbers, but we need to understand what they mean," Mei explained. "That comes from experience, not algorithms." Lin continued his walk through the facility. In many ways, it looked less futuristic than it had on opening day. Some of the most elaborate technological systems had been replaced with simpler solutions. The robots still cleaned the pens, but they'd followed more basic programming. The feeding system still calculated individual nutritional needs, but farmers could easily override it based on their observations. "We try to make everything perfect with technology," Dr. Huang had said before retiring last year. "But farming isn't perfect. It's alive." Outside, Lin met with a group of visitors, traditional farmers from a southern province. Unlike the international delegations that had once flocked to see the marvel of automation, these were working farmers interested in practical improvements. "We can't afford your robots," said the group leader honestly. "But we want to learn about your disease prevention methods and feed efficiency." "That's exactly why we invited you," Lin replied. "Let me show you changes that don't require rebuilding your entire farm." For the next 2 hours, Lin showed them modest innovations, improved ventilation systems, simple monitoring cameras, feed mixers that reduced waste. The visitors took notes and asked practical questions. This kind of knowledge sharing had become a regular event, with the automated farm serving as a testing ground for technologies that could be adapted to farms of all sizes. After the visitors left, Lin drove to the nearby village where he had grown up. The place had changed too. While some traditional farms had indeed closed, others had adapted, adopting parts of the automated approach while maintaining traditional practices. The agricultural school that Lin had helped establish now trained young farmers in both computer programming and animal husbandry. At the small restaurant in the village center, Lin joined Wu Jing for lunch. Now technical director at one of the newer automated farms, she had been the hero during that first power outage years ago. "The agricultural minister wants us to build 10 more farms like ours," Lin told her. "They're calling it the future of Chinese farming." Wu looked thoughtful. "But which version? The one we started with, or the one we have now?" It was a good question. Their current approach was very different from their original vision. The first design had sought to remove humans from farming entirely. The current model used technology to make human farmers more effective. "I was wrong at the beginning," Lin admitted. "I thought better farming meant replacing farmers with machines. Now I understand it means giving farmers better machines." Their conversation was interrupted by Lin's phone. A video call was coming in from the agricultural department of a university in Kenya. "They want to learn about our model," Lin explained as he prepared to answer. "They have different conditions, different needs. They'll adapt what works and ignore what doesn't." And that, Lin realized, was the true success of their project. Not creating a perfect automated system, but starting a conversation about how farming could evolve. Different regions would find different balances between tradition and technology. Some would adopt more automation, others less. As he walked back to his car, Lin passed a small traditional farm where a farmer was installing solar panels to power a simple monitoring system. The man waved, and Lin waved back. This mixing of old and new, this evolution rather than revolution, had created something neither fully traditional nor completely automated, something uniquely suited to the needs of the people, the animals, and the land. The two modern farm had found its place after all, not by forcing the future, but by helping it grow naturally from the rich soil of the past.